So welcome to the Hixon Center Podcast series. The Hixon Center for Sustainable Environmental Design is an interdisciplinary center at Harvey Mudd College in Claremont, California, which was created in 2015 to initiate, support, and coordinate college-wide programs and activities related to sustainability research, teaching, and practice. One of our newer efforts to engage the campus and Claremont College's community on sustainability topics is through this podcast series. And in each podcast, we hope to bring in individuals who can speak to some contemporary environmental issues as well as their own background and work. So we hope you'll enjoy, and for more information on the Hixon Center, you can find us online at hmc.edu/hcsed. So my name is Louis Spanias, and I currently serve as the acting director of the Hixon Center. And with me today is Kayla Yamada, who is a junior engineering major here at Harvey Mudd and serves as one of the co-presidents of the campus's sole sustainability student group, ESW Moth, which stands for Engineers for a Sustainable World / Mudders Organizing for Sustainability Solutions. So today we brought Kayla in to learn a little bit more about her time at Mudd, her interest in environmental issues and her engagement with those issues on campus, and a bit about her experience with other Mudd students at the National ESW Conference in Atlanta earlier this month. So welcome, Kayla.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Of course. So we're going to start simple. So just, if you don't mind, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about sort of where you're from, how you grew up, and maybe a bit about, when you were applying to colleges, what drew you to Harvey Mudd, what brought you here?
Sure. So I'm originally from Upland, California, which is a city very close to Claremont, where Harvey Mudd is. It's literally adjacent. And actually, in 6th grade, I was given the Harvey Mudd College Math and Science Award.
Oh, wow.
Which was given to, a boy and a girl in our graduating 6th grade class. And
wow.
At the time, I was like, what is a Harvey Mudd College? I had no idea. And I guess it was a little bit of foreshadowing because both me and the guy who got the award are at Mudd now.
Oh, nice.
And so maybe that's good advertising for them, I guess.
Good PR.
Yeah. And so I guess I've always been interested in math and science, and then on the environmental side, my family's really environmental. My dad worked for the Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, as a civil engineer, and so he would take us along with him on some business trips to different national parks and a lot of road trips to places. So I got a lot of exposure growing up, I think, to natural places and also seeing the human effects on these places, and just through that have really grown up with a respect for the environment and I guess a sort of feeling of action that needs to be taken in that. And so coming into Mudd, I definitely knew I wanted to do environmental things and knew I wanted to be an engineer, and so it wasn't that difficult of a decision to come here. And then I guess through Mudd and just being in this college environment, I got exposed to a lot more issues beyond just the simple humans are using the natural resources too fast and polluting the environment. And I think I've become a lot more aware of some environmental justice issues and definitely that the communities that are most affected by air pollution or the people who have the least access to green spaces is definitely an issue I think that environmentalists should be active about and aware of.
Yeah. Okay.
That's kind of my tale.
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's really cool. I had no idea about your parents having that background. That's really interesting. How, since you've come to Mudd, how might you broadly describe the experience of being here? Whether it be both, living here, going to school here, and, obviously you had this interest in the environment coming in, but when did you really feel like you got involved in sustainability on campus? What was that decision or that step like?
I think Mudd makes it somewhat difficult to get involved in extracurricular activities because you're so overloaded with your core classes and your major requirements and workload that I admit for the first 2 years I wasn't that involved in ESW Moth because I felt like I didn't have the time for it. But I was able to take a few classes like Intro to Environmental Analysis at Pomona, and Mudd offered a science, technology, and culture class about water, and so that was a cool like interdisciplinary look at water. And I guess through those classes I kind of kept in touch with like current environmental events, and that's in that way, like in an academic sense, but not really in a student like club sense. So that definitely started at the end of sophomore year when I attended one of the ESW Moth meetings, which I've been trying to make but not that regularly. And then I think there were, of the 5 of us who attended that meeting, we all got leadership positions. And so now it's like, oh, I have to get involved, and I have to think about like more, what do I want this club to look like, and how can I not only encourage myself to get involved, but encourage other people as well in this club.
Sure.
And so I think, especially since becoming co-president of ESW Moth, that's really like thrown me into the deep end of like becoming more involved in like campus sustainability and like planning events and going to events and stuff. Yeah.
So before we get into more of the ESW stuff, I'm curious, considering that you sort of grew up around these topics and that this is not unfamiliar to you, was there still perhaps a moment that maybe you remember either from when you were young or more recently where that was like a Eureka moment? It was like, this is now what I really am interested in. I think I have a passion for environmental issues or this particular environmental issue. Maybe just that moment where the light bulb went off.
I don't think so.
Yeah?
I guess I've definitely heard of like talking to friends about it, and they've had their like aha moments. But I mean, I had to give a speech about what our purpose was in another class, and I talked about how in kindergarten my favorite phrase was water treatment plants because somehow I could always like point them out when we drove by on the street, and so it kind of has just been a part of my life for so long, and I couldn't imagine, I guess, doing something that wasn't trying to benefit like people or the environment.
Okay. So it's always been there. It's not, there wasn't a given moment for you apart from just probably a collection of experiences then that you had as a kid and growing up.
Definitely, yeah. I think just the way that my parents have just like kind of integrated it into our lives, and like composting, just from like composting at home, growing up with a worm box, it's just like kind of just the way of life, to like care about the environment and like want to do something to change it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So now fast forward that to, you were sort of a little bit involved in ESW, then you get thrown in, you are now one of the co-presidents of the club, and you talked a bit about that really sort of you reshaped your perspective a bit on, now I have to suddenly learn about what this club really has to do and take on projects and events. So what has that experience been like? Can you tell us also a bit about the group and what they've been doing this term or even historically, and what we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so I guess ESW Moth is a fairly small club. I guess a lot of clubs at Mudd tend to be smaller because it's hard for people to find time, understandably.
Sure.
And so it's kind of, I've noticed the club depends on who the leadership is for that term. And so my predecessors focused a lot on like events, and so they had like a eco hackathon. And so I guess when Jasmine and I came into presidency, we thought about what we kind of wanted to make the club into. And one of the main focuses was how at meetings they kind of just told us information and then we left, and I didn't really know about other things that were going on in the club or other people.
Sure.
And so we wanted to make it more of a discussion-based meeting where it's not only like telling you about events, but we talk about issues as well, and I guess build more bonds with this community. Because it is small, it's like good to know other people, other students on campus who are passionate about it. And so I guess we've like integrated more activities during the meeting. So like one meeting we made buttons, like sustainability buttons, and another one we talked about like the history of sustainability at Mudd, and some of like the darker sides of like how this college was founded on like mine money, and how I think in Cyprus like these mines like funded the Nazis and stuff.
Oh boy.
So
oh gosh.
there's like some more sketchy parts.
Sure. A very different time.
Different time. And I felt like these conversations wouldn't necessarily happen just, day to day.
Right.
And so it was really cool to get together in that. And I think that's definitely brought our group closer together.
Mm-hmm.
So another thing that we focused on, I guess on top of that, is just building a community and kind of having more outreach events during the year. And so things we did this year was like a field trip to the Azusa recycling plant, which I think people have been wanting that to happen for a while. So I'm glad that finally came through. Some alumni even emailed me like, wow, you guys finally went.
Oh, that's awesome.
How was it? Yeah.
That's awesome.
And then we did a lot of events for like Power Down, which is the 5C energy competition to save electricity. And even though Mudd didn't do so well,
unfortunately
this year,
not. No.
I think we really liked the events that happened.
Sure.
And, it was really cool that people engaged in like power play, points competition. And one of my favorite events was that people wrote chalk notes to the earth on Valentine's Day, and so it was really pretty to see all these different notes and drawings that people made on the sidewalk. And then, what else have we done? SUS reps.
Right,
That was a big thing that we tried to do this year. And so I guess in line with trying to reach out to more of the student body, we recruited people to be the sustainability reps of their dorm. We called them SUS reps. And they had like a theme and made flyers for that. So it was like on recycling, like what you can recycle, where the recycling bins were, and then some of the SUS reps held like a Jeopardy event about it, like educating about recycling in Claremont. And so I think that's pretty cool because the flyers they make are very like college student friendly, and
sure.
Some of them are pretty funny. And then I think this semester they're focusing on composting.
Right.
And so they make composting flyers, and I think this week that they're tabling for like educating people like what you can compost and where the compost bins are.
Nice.
And so even though I think we could have done better on encouraging like engagement in the dorm with the SUS reps. For like a pilot year, I think it was pretty good in just like getting some more involvement and having a bit more like visibility on campus, which is good. And they're now considering having the SUS reps be under ASHMIC.
Okay.
So that might be a change too, in that it won't just be like students, but it'll be like under this student government branch, and so maybe it'll make the position a bit more official.
Sure. How based on perhaps your interactions with them and your experience now with the group this past year, what do you think is or are the biggest hurdles when it comes to engaging the campus? I mean, you've talked a bit about, first of all, even just getting involved is not easy. I mean, the workload is substantial, and of course, academics come first. That's what you're here for. But what do you think it is that perhaps is that is the hurdle to get involved on sustainability issues, or even other issues that people might care about, but just haven't gotten there yet?
Yeah, that's definitely something that's come up, I think, in a lot of the clubs that I'm in.
Yeah.
Like, in order to do anything, you have to really have, like, the passion for it, and you make the time, basically. And so I guess in trying to engage, like, other students, it's more about, like, how do you make them care about it, and then maybe they'll come to your event. And so I think the primary prop we use is food.
Yes. Learned that along the way.
Yeah, so just like offering cool snacks, or recently at the Admitted Students Program weekend this past weekend, we had farmers market food from the Claremont Farmers Market. And so I think that was really cool to bring in not just like your standard cookies or something, but it's actually something that is in line with like our values, and we're supporting like the local farmers, which is really cool.
Nice.
And I think just having events, I guess we've noticed like there's a set group of people who are passionate about sustainability.
Right.
And so they're the ones who are kind of like the warriors in trying to get the word out and encouraging other people to come, encouraging their friends to come. And so it's definitely supporting them, and then hopefully outreaching to other students. But definitely, I think students are involved in a variety of places, and it's kind of hard to you don't want to wear them thin.
Right.
And then, be conscious of like everybody's time as well.
Yeah. You have to carefully walk that line of utilize the people who do have the passion and the spirit for it, but you don't want to wear anyone out in the process.
Yeah.
You want people to engage.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. But one of the other things, as we're talking a bit about ESW and the things you all have done, you recently went to the conference in Atlanta, the ESW National Conference. So could you tell us a bit more about that and what that experience was like? It was a group of 5 of you that went. So how do you think it went overall?
Yeah, I think it was really cool that we all got to go. And it was a little bit of scrounging around for funding.
Sure, yeah. As it always is.
But then, we ended up taking 3 frosh and myself, a junior, and then a senior as well.
Nice.
And so it was a cool group of people who not necessarily were like that close before, but I think we came out of it really close.
Oh, nice.
And so that was good. We visited Georgia Tech, which is where they held the conference, and a lot of chapters, ESW chapters around the nation came, so we got to meet like UCSD,
nice.
Rochester, Rose-Hulman, Cornell, a lot of University of Texas, like I think University of Texas Austin, University of Texas El Paso, who are really active and passionate. It was over, I think, a Friday and a Saturday. And so they had, like, I guess your standard set of, like, speakers and different workshops that you could go to. So one of the things that I went to was an agriculture-ponics or aquaponics workshop. And this was a former ESW member, but who's now, like, working in industry. And he's working in New York City for, like, urban aquaponics or hydroponics gardens.
Sure.
Because, you don't have very much space to grow food there. And so they're trying to find, like, rooftops or other places, like, indoor places that you could grow food and have access to this fresh produce, even if you live in a city.
Nice.
So I think that's something that we don't really talk about here. It's like, I guess, not a prominent topic, because in California especially, you have access to all this agriculture.
Sure.
And so I think it was a really cool topic that I guess I was exposed to just because I went to the conference.
Nice. How were there other interesting speakers or presentations that people went to that you either for you or for any of the other folks that went that were quite resonant or impactful, you think?
I like the keynote speaker. She's the Chief Resilience Officer of Atlanta.
Okay.
And she used to be the Chief Sustainability Officer, but then Atlanta got chosen in the Rockefeller Foundation for 100 Resilient Cities.
Oh, okay.
And so I guess they have this fund now to invest in more resilient infrastructure. And so she had a talk about how we shouldn't only think about sustainability, so like how do you continue this for future generations, but about resilience and how do you improve it and make it better. So I think Atlanta recently had a bridge that collapsed.
Yeah.
And so it's not only about rebuilding the bridge, but redesigning the bridge so that it's not only like using resources that are available and that are sustainable, but in a way that's going to give everyone access and just making it a better, like rethinking the design.
Yeah.
So I thought that was like a really cool idea and something that I hadn't really considered before either, but like resilience versus just sustainability.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a developing topic. You know, we have, especially in the higher ed world, there's a lot of conversations around like climate commitments and carbon commitments, but the big new one is resilience and moving schools away from just you have to address your emissions and bring things down, reduce your impact, but now how are you going to prepare for what is eventually going to come? You have to, especially for us in SoCal, it's just going to get hotter. The weather becomes a little less predictable, and we have to deal with that. So it's interesting that they really focused on that, it sounds like, at the conference.
I think the theme was something about, building communities or
building bridges or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
And then I think one of the biggest things I took away from the conference was their postering session. And so chapters have or discuss their posters about their projects that they're having in their chapters in that year. And so that was really cool to see that people were making like the solar car project, which is like pretty big. I guess a lot of universities compete in it.
Right. Yeah.
And another one was putting like solar lamps in an area of campus that was pretty dark and like unsafe for people.
Oh wow.
I think University of Texas did a project on building a bridge in Puerto Rico after the hurricane came through. And so I think a lot of these projects helped me rethink what we're doing here at Mudd and how I guess a lot of our projects were more small scale and stuff that we thought we could be able to accomplish in a short time, and maybe thinking about having a bit bigger picture in this and what kind of projects can we do even if it might take a couple semesters or a couple years to accomplish. I think one downside is that talking to these chapters though, like UCSD has over 200 members, and so they have like several projects going on with dozens of students, and we don't necessarily have that here. But like I think it was definitely inspiring to talk to these people doing these really cool projects and being inspired by what we could accomplish here too.
Yeah, well, every club starts somewhere. I mean, obviously this club has been around for a little while, but I'm sure every school can talk a bit, and even in my experience, clubs are cyclical, and it could be every year, it could be every few years. That momentum goes, and then sometimes it falls off and goes again. So, I mean, but it's conferences like those that can rebuild your momentum a little bit. So it kind of sounds like, maybe going forward, there's some thought there, not just on what you're doing on campus, but longer term stuff that might be off campus.
Yeah, and actually, we brought back the idea of like hydroponics, and people were interested in the club.
Nice.
So thinking about maybe this could be something that we all focus on, like we all focus on a big project instead of having separate, smaller projects.
Sure.
Like
Yeah. Well, those are conversations that'll happen. But it's cool that you had a great experience and that the 5 of you got to go. And I know that we'll hear a little more from the other students as well on this. But turning back to you, and sort of as we get to the end of this, I'm sure this is a question that you'll eventually start to hate getting. But have you thought a bit about after Mudd? I mean, you're going to be a senior next year, and that's always a big unknown for people. But I mean, is there, even if obviously maybe now you don't know, but any thought about where you want to, like, what direction you want to go in and where you'd like to end up after Mudd?
Yeah. I guess I don't really know yet.
Sure.
I think about Mudd is just that you have exposure to all these different types of engineering. And so I guess coming into it, I was like, oh, environmental engineering. That's obviously what I want to do. Mm-hmm. But learning more about it, you actually learn, like, what environmental engineering focuses on and how it's more about maybe pollution mitigation and water management versus, like, if I want to work on solar panels, I should learn a bit more electrical things. Mm-hmm. And so I guess even knowing that I want to do something, like, in the environment, it's such a broad category. So I'm not really sure yet.
Sure.
But I'm hoping. I was looking into consulting for a while too, because I think there's a mudder who's working in an environmental consulting firm that I was talking to, and it seems like her job's really interesting, and you get to kind of work on a variety of problems. So maybe something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also really interested in, like, the nonprofit side.
Sure.
But maybe I want to, like, establish myself a bit first.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. There's, like, still a lot of opportunities and a lot of options.
Yeah. It's a growing field of options, at least. That I think you'll have your pick there. But I figured I'd ask in case you knew. Oh yeah, this is exactly. But of course, no one ever does. No one ever does. But.
I envy the people who are like, I'm doing renewable energy. I'm doing solar. Like.
It's okay. That's such a small group of folks, though. So don't feel bad about it at all. But it's cool to be thinking about it. And then I guess sort of getting into the last question about this, you're sort of in this latter half of your time here at Mudd, and then just this past weekend we had our admitted students coming in, and we'll see more of them on campus. And hopefully, maybe some of them might listen to this, or some students who have sort of just gotten here maybe listening. But do you have any lasting pieces of advice or, sort of tips that you might give not just to incoming students, but perhaps newer students, whether it be about sort of getting through the experience at Mudd or making the most of the experience, and then also maybe on the sustainability front, like how should people get involved and engage with those issues?
Okay. I guess we talked about this earlier,
Mm-hmm.
but I guess advice to students would be to find what you're passionate in.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Mudd grind can get taxing, and you definitely need to find a group of people who can support you and who you feel like you share that spark and that passion with, and they're the ones who encourage you to keep going, and this topic is what encourages you to, like, keep pursuing your degree. So it doesn't have to be sustainability. I'm also involved in, like, the Asian Pacific Islander community, and
nice.
I think there's a lot of talk about how do we try to build this community and have it sustained for, all these future Mudders. And so I think it's a difficult issue to tackle, especially if you have, like, a smaller school.
Sure.
And maybe quicker, or like you said earlier, there's, like, the cycles of clubs.
There's turnaround.
You have better years and worse years. But if you're passionate about something, I think, especially at Mudd, they allow you to take the initiative to
Mm-hmm.
pursue it, and they'll give you the resources, and you can find professors who will support you, and then you can find the students who share your same interests. And so I think that's where you can get started in that.
Nice.
And that's what will keep you going. And then as far as sustainability, there's ESW Moth.
Okay,
That people
nice.
are welcome to join. And then even if they can't attend meetings, we definitely have events going on. You can join projects.
Yeah.
Like us on Facebook. I think this weekend we have a data science workshop.
That's right.
That we're putting out. And so I think just like following us or being also on the EA listserv is a great way, I think, to stay connected in like the sustainability and environmental sphere, because they post a lot about like cool events that are coming up.
Nice.
Yeah. I guess just like taking classes too.
Sure.
That are in this field, and not necessarily at Mudd, but a lot of the other campuses offer really cool classes.
Sure.
I think I found people off campus who are involved as well through classes. So I think that's a cool opportunity. Yep.
Nice. Well, I think that's probably a good spot to leave it. So Kayla, thanks for coming in and for taking the time. So as always, we'll leave it there. And if anyone who is listening is curious to learn more about ESW Moth, you can find them online on Facebook. And if you're curious to learn as well about sort of the other sustainability projects that we have, not just in the center, but things that we do with ESW and other groups, you can obviously go online to the Hixon Center's website at hmc.edu/hcsed. And if you have feedback about these podcasts and what you'd like to hear more about, feel free to shoot us an email at hixoncenter@hmc.edu. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.